Welcome everyone to Forthright Solutions Spotlight Series. I'm Kristen from Forthright, and we're really thankful for your time today. Every month we showcase a different solution from our trusted technology partners that solves a challenge or problem we're seeing in the industry. And this month we're featuring Itopia. So let's get the show started. I'd like to introduce today's headliners. From Forthright, Matt, though I think Matt is on, but just in listen mode. And Steve from Forthright, and then we have Alex from Itopia, and we also have two Alexes from Itopia on the line. But with that, all that being said, I'm going to throw the mic over to Steve to talk about Forthright a little bit.
Great, thank you, Kristen. Good afternoon, everyone. I wanted to start by thanking you for joining us today. I'm Steve Zoberg, COO at Forthright. And for those of you who have joined us but haven't worked with Forthright before, I'm going to give you a very brief, quick 5-minute intro, maybe 4 minutes, just so you kind of have an idea of kind of our background and what we do and why that's relevant to this conversation today. You know, Forthright's been helping clients optimize their application delivery for literally decades. And for us, it's more than just the tools and the technology. It's about how do we supercharge your end user experiences, right? So we basically built our entire practice around being user-centric or people-centric in everything we do. Now, what that means is that our passion, our focus, it's not centered around tools. And I know we're going to talk about some tools today, but it's not just centered around tools and products and processes and what might be optimal for us, but rather we put ourselves in your shoes. We pay very close attention to the experiences and the outcomes that your technology choices have on your end user population, and also how they impact your business outcomes. And so over the years, we've recognized that many of our clients kind of fall into 3 different categories of how we can help them. Some of them need consulting services around strategic initiatives or maybe prototyping new technologies, while others need additional resources for day-to-day operations. So maybe they're rolling out new projects and they need assistance. And then of course, the third group, well, they want to reduce their operational expenses. They want to focus on their core businesses. And they feel that, you know what, I'm going to leverage Forthright to manage very specific technology sets for us. So they'll leverage our managed services. Now, regardless where you might fall, there's 6 core service offerings that we have up on the screen here. And basically, they address these various needs in different ways. And, you know, some of our clients will leverage 1 or 2. And actually, we have some that leverage all of them, but in different capacities. So if you're interested in finding out more information about any of these services, do me a favor, please reach out, call our office, or send us a quick note at success@forthright.com. And we'd be, you know, more than happy to have a follow-up conversation and sit down and actually talk about how we can help you. So now on to today's spotlight conversation. And today we're going to focus on how do we deliver VDI in the cloud. Now, to some, that sounds pretty simple, right? Because there's many ways to accomplish that. However, I think we find that not all solutions are created equal. And from an end user experience perspective, today's spotlight is going to focus on your IT staff and your service desk staff and what their experience deploying and managing VDI is like, because their experience matters too. And with that being said, you know, if your solution has an effective and simplified management platform, well, it's going to empower your technical team to make less mistakes. They're going to avoid typical human errors, and essentially they're going to execute faster. Now, in turn, you can also expect an improved, an improvement in user productivity and an overall enhanced experience for your end user. So when done right, it's kind of a win-win for all parties. So in theory, deploying cloud resources is simple, right? I mean, that's what everybody says because you've now removed all the hardware complexity, you know, from operating your own data center. But as many of us know, and probably everybody even on this webinar, you know that the reality is very different. Cloud introduces a lot of new complexities to the equation with the endless deployment choices and the never-ending new features, right, that you can enable because it's a constant state of evolution. And so leveraging the right tools to simplify how you execute can really make all the difference. And today we're joined by Alex from Itopia that Kristen introduced, and also our very own Frank Marino, who's our Forthright VP of Professional Services. Frank's got quite a bit of experience working with Itopia and with our clients. And Frank, I was hoping that you can kind of kick off the conversation today by setting the stage for Alex's product walkthrough. Maybe you can share a little bit about, you know, how introducing Itopia has been a game changer for our deployments, and you know, kind of set up this conversation for us.
Yeah, I can start there. Thank you, Steve. So as Steve mentioned, Frank Reno, VP of Professional Services over at Forthright. So I've been working with itopia for several years now, and we've been using it for several deployments for these VDI solutions that we have, and the list of reasons for us to go this route have continued to grow over the years. But I'm going to try to sum it up into 3 focuses: cost savings, time savings, and elevating user experience. And as Alex goes through the walkthrough, I'll make sure to highlight those areas. But Alex, those are the 3 that I want to focus on. As far as us, really, in a nutshell, we're able to deploy an environment very, very quickly that's following best practices, and there's that time to value to get us started sooner and faster. But if that was all that it did, there's, I don't know, 20,000 different products that could probably do that. I think where itopia shines the most is in the day-to-day operations and the upkeep and the continuous advancements on saving for time and effort, and then ultimately dollars. And I think that's where it's really changed for us. What it's allowed us to do is at Forthright we have a different tiers of engineers that work with us all the time, from your level 1s all the way up to architect level. And what itopia has been able to do is allow me to take the staff that runs many of these systems and really empower them to do things that in a typical environment you would either spend quite a bit of time creating necessary role-based access, or just not give it to them at all. And now you're having higher level engineers taking care of problems that conceivably in the EUC space should be handled by an entry level tech or someone in that 1 to 2 tier space. And itopia has been able to bring that into a single console for us, and we've benefited quite a bit from it. And ultimately, obviously, our customers have benefited because now when they call in with an issue or trying to service or something, the person that answers the phone is actually able to address it from taking that call all the way to resolution. And I think that's a huge value add, right? Because first call resolution is kind of important. And then ultimately, as Steve mentioned, our focus is always around that end person. And quite frankly, they don't want to be passed around. So having enough of those tools while keeping their environment safe, I think itopia does a really great job of that. So Alex, if it's all right with you, I'd like you to kind of show us how we're saving costs, saving time on efforts that we're doing. And I'll highlight the ones that we use at Forthright that's kind of been special to us. And then ultimately how we're elevating the end user experience by being able to provide these things to them, overall.
Absolutely, happy to do so. So thank you, Steve and Frank, for a great introduction and a pretty quick recap of itopia. But I know the things that you wanted us to touch upon are reducing costs, reducing the complexity of management, and end user experience. And frankly, that is why itopia was designed. We are looking to reduce that total cost of ownership by eliminating those costly hardware stacks that come with on-premises VDI like Citrix and VMware. Through the automation and orchestration that itopia brings, we automate somewhere between 300 and 400 tasks. So really what we're looking to do is we're looking to take that seasoned IT professional and not replace them, but repurpose them to be able to add higher value tasks to the company and make it so that a tier 1 junior admin can actually manage thousands of virtual desktops. And then at the end of the day, we're looking to accomplish what it's all about. Do my employees' applications work seamlessly? Can they continue doing their job productively? And the answer to all those questions is yes. A couple of the things that people are looking to accomplish, especially in these post-COVID, I guess we're still in it, in these COVID times, is eliminate data center costs, BYOD, pay-as-you-go model, really looking to eliminate that capital expenditure and turning into 100% OpEx, and that's something that itopia does via Google Cloud. So what is itopia? How does it work? itopia, like I mentioned, is simply an automation and orchestration platform. And what I mean by that is, itopia is not a software that gets installed. We don't install any clients or agents. It's a SaaS offering that allows you to spin up GCP infrastructure and access that using either Windows 10, sole tenant nodes, or a technology that people are very familiar with like Microsoft RDS. And with this, I should mention that everything lives on your GCP project behind your firewall. Itopia doesn't have anything access to data, any information, and because of that, we can meet compliances from all different verticals. So this is it, and I'm going to get into a deeper dive demo, but this is Itopia in a sense. It's a single unified console that lives in the browser from which you can quickly access everything as it relates to the Microsoft RDS technology, as well as the infrastructure that gets spun up because of Itopia. We try to make it so that in 99% of cases, you can train someone to use this without ever having to go into the GCP console. Everything can be managed all from here. How it works from an employee, a worker, a consultant, whoever you're giving this access to is, Joe Worker picks their device. It could be an iPad, PC, Mac, doesn't matter. With the credentials that they're provided, they log in. Things happen in the background in the Google data center, and we can actually give the ability to spin up a full-scale desktop or give individual applications, and that's really personal preference. And unlike some of our competitors, those are both included for the Itopia license fee, whereas with some of our competitors, those would be two different price points. We're purpose-built for Google Cloud. It's the only place you can find Itopia. I won't get too much into this, but from some testing and our experiences, that we find that they have the lowest latency and the best security. And then some of the use cases that we can support and how we do it is security policies and permission through Trusted Active Directory. You can manage different groups of users using custom image creation to ensure that accountants and marketing folks have access to the tools that they need to do their jobs. We have a technology built in so that you can manage. We understand that our customers are global, so you can ensure that your users in North America will be routed to the closest data center, and that your users in Europe will also be routed accordingly. And of course, redundant snapshots and recovery. So we make it so there's robust data protection. And what I always like to say at this part is that the thing about Itopia that's really nice is you can integrate anything that is available in Windows. So if you need multi-factor authentication, not a problem. A lot of our customers integrate with Duo, Okta, anything of the sorts. I'm going to spend a little bit of time here because really when it comes to cloud costs, it's all about saving. So, Itopia has developed a few things, not only with how we approach VDI, but some of the things that we integrate into a solution with saving 30 to 40% on cloud infrastructure costs. If you're not familiar with the cloud, I'm sure many of you are, but think of it as an electric bill, right? You leave the lights on all day, you're paying for it. You turn the lights off, that's electricity you're not paying for. So, the first way we do that is we believe in a multi-user session approach. So whereas some legacy VDI technology will put one user per virtual machine, depending on the workload, we'll stack anywhere between 20 to 25 users on a single virtual machine and share those resources accordingly. We have a feature called auto scaling, and really essentially what that does is it allows you to add machines as users are added to the environment. So things will get spun up automatically. So not only from a resource standpoint, but also from a management standpoint, it makes it very simple. We have two features called scheduled and dynamic uptime. Scheduled uptime being you can actually turn machines on and off on a schedule. So if you work in a more traditional corporate environment, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, you can ensure that anytime outside those individual working hours, machines are turned off accordingly, or most machines are turned off so that you're not paying for runtime that's not being utilized by your employees. And dynamic uptime is one of my favorite features. It allows you actually to turn machines on and off in real time as users log on and off into the environment. So think about your typical work day, right? You might have your overachievers. They're signing on at 7 a.m. They need to have their resources available, but most of the working population is, still getting ready for the day. As you hit that peak, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3, every machine's up and running because users are logging on, so they have to accommodate kind of traffic. Towards the end of the day, when people start logging off, those machines, start turning off automatically, only making available what is needed for the employees to hang around to continue to work. And lastly, we actually integrate with GCP BigQuery, so you can run some very interesting custom reports on billing, user activity, application activity. It's a great way to look at how your environment's being utilized, what applications are being utilized. And what I always say is the Itopia journey does not end with deploying. It's a constantly ever evolving process where you're able to optimize as you go to continually cut costs. So, this is something that Frank, Steve, I know you're very familiar with it, so I just want to give you an opportunity if you wanted to share some actual, anecdotes about any of these features, feel free. Otherwise, I'm happy to move on.
Yeah, actually, I was going to jump in. I was waiting for you to finish. So in terms of some of the
see it.
cost-saving things here that we've seen here for our accounts, so dynamic uptime is also one of my favorites as well. Typically, that a lot of solutions have scheduled uptime capabilities, and to try to give people an analogy that works, I'm going to pick off your electric bill kind of thing. Scheduled uptime is like when you have a home automation system that says at 9 o'clock, turn on these lights at 7 p.m. or whatever, turn those lights off, and it's sunset or sunrise rather, turn those lights off. That's scheduled, right? The challenge you run into with this, and everyone that uses this can relate, is that you always have fluctuations in users that are unpredictable. There's a project that's going on that you weren't privy to, so therefore that project needs to get done. People were now working on the weekends. There's that funness. If the lights aren't on, how are they going to connect? And now you're getting that phone call, so forth and so on. That's never fun. Other scenarios that relate to this is that you're spending a lot of effort with reports and trying to determine log-on times to really maximize and squeeze out the little extras, because depending on the size of your environments, a couple of minutes to hours per several hundred VMs will definitely have some significant savings on a per day basis. And that's what we've seen when you're trying to work out scheduled events. In the dynamic world, it's really more like having like motion sensors and daylight sensors to be able to turn on lights and off based on the time of day, people walking into the room or not walking into the room, and so forth and so on. Now, where this analogy breaks is because I'm sure all of you have known that you probably walk into the room, haven't moved around much, and the sensor fails and turns off the light. That is not the case here. So the user logged in is activity. That's how it's determining it to be able to say whether that user is there or not. And so that's the big one there. And you guys, for those that have tried to do this manually, I can tell you that this is a very time-consuming process. You're taking in a lot of data, and it's never right because it's not systematic. You're making a decision based on historics, not on actual, and that's where dynamic comes into a big play here. And I think that's a really big effort there. And then the other one is around sizing. This is interesting to me because when you're anyone that's doing a EUC environment, one of the troubles that we've always run into is how to size this properly. Well, we already know how many users we have, or roughly around the number of users, and the system is able to actually do that legwork for you, rather than you trying to figure out, well, is this enough? Add some more. Is this enough? Add some more. And then as you add users or shrink users, right, moving in that same direction based on your needs. Auto scaling do that for you. A huge time saver, and it also saves you from situations where that oops moment happens, like, oh, I forgot that we added the seasonal workers for this weekend, and now it's Monday morning and everybody is just slammed in terms of resources. Those kind of things can be taken care of for you because it was already that logic has already been put into the system.
So that's really kind of the long and short of it from the actual presentation that I want to give. I do always like to dive in and give more of an actual demonstration, but just something I always like to mention. Itopia was humbly recognized as a technology partner of the year for Google. We're like I mentioned, we're 100% exclusive to Google, and they've been extremely great partners of ours. So we're really excited for continuing to work with them. And lastly, just want to touch upon some of the actual customers we have. So as you can see here, I know it's a lot of logos, but you see some ones at least that we're really proud of. Cleveland Clinic, big hospital group. You see things like Blockchain, Third Floor in the entertainment space, ProctorU, which is one of the biggest online proctoring companies in the country, Iowa City. So, this is really just not only something that we're really proud of, but in a way that I like to say is there's really not a use case in a vertical that we can't meet. So if anything resonates, please obviously reach out to Forthright, and they'll in turn reach out to us, but we'd love to work with you in any vertical that you might be in. So real quick, I just want to start with the actual end user experience, right? There's two ways you can actually access this environment, and one is strictly right through the web browser. So as you can see, you can actually create a custom web link, and this is really more of our, hey, we're going to give this unique URL to your end user, and they're just going to be able to pull the applications that they need. Hopefully I didn't get kicked off yet because of inactivity, but as you can see here, you know, as Alex Banya, a user in the itopia demo environment, they say, hey, Alex gets access to Chrome, Visual Studio's Code, and a full desktop environment. So really what I can do is I can click on any of these things and I can pull them right up through the browser.
This is actually my preferred method for connecting, by the way. I find this to be the most effective for most use cases. Power users maybe not to that a full extent, especially if you like peripherals. But if you're doing everything inside of the actual desktop or application, you're not necessarily trying to interface with local devices or local you know, printers, scanners, that kind of stuff, then it actually works out really, really well. And therefore, there's also no agent to worry about. So when you're working with users, just telling them to go to a website is super easy. Log in and work from there. In fact, actually, my production environment runs just like that. So.
Yeah, it's definitely something we're seeing becoming more and more popular, especially that the fact that you can actually access a full desktop environment through the browser. It makes it really easy to, you know, set up, and depending on what kind of use case it is and who your end user is, but to give them that ability to have that, you know, I'm a corporate guy. I've worked at big corporations my entire life, so you know, I'm definitely more comfortable with that full desktop experience, but that's something you can offer right here through the browser. So let that launch for a second, and then I will talk about the other way to access it, like you mentioned. But you can see here, very comfortable. Feels like I'm just running this locally on my computer. The other way is, and the reason I like to bring it up is, you know, through this Cloud Automated Stack dashboard, you actually have access to this RDP download file. And by putting in your credentials, it'll actually give you a file that will allow you to do that dynamic routing that I was mentioning. So this is how, you know, a user in Europe is going to get routed to the Europe data center and not somewhere in North America to make for the lowest latency possible. So, you know, again, I'll just pull this up really quickly just to show you it, but you know, this is opening that same full desktop environment through the client on my PC. Very similar. You can pull up anything you need. And you can also make for either persistent or non-persistent profiles, and we also have session roaming. So if I were to, you know, close here, close out of Visual Studio's Code and open this up through the browser, the work would stay. And that's something that's also, you know, important to a lot of customers. So that's it from the end user experience. Again, like, you know, we're not, what would we say? We're not inventing anything new here. Obviously, this is technology that's been around for a while. Really, where I like to spend my time is because this is essentially why, you know, people come to itopia, is like, okay, how do we manage this easily? And if you see here, this is itopia Cloud Automated Stack, or CAS as we call it, right? It's this single control plane. Very quickly, you can see your deployment details, where you're deployed, how many users are online, offline, and a lot of other some quick hitting information. But, you know, the real crux of everything is right here on this left side, right? You see these couple tabs, Cloud Desktops and Cloud Manager. Now, the Cloud Desktop tab is everything as it relates to Microsoft RDS technology. And Frank and Steve, please stop me anywhere you want to interject something. This Cloud Desktop tab is everything as it relates to Microsoft RDS. So you can quickly come in, you could check your users, you can edit them, disable them, remove them, you can add new ones, and you can also quickly see, you know, who's part of this environment. You can manage your applications from here, so you can see, you know, just going very quickly back. Yep.
Sorry, man. So
whatever you need to do.
When we're talking about time saving, guys, this is one of those things that I talked about in terms of the value that it brings. What you're looking at right here, just very quickly, between all the users that are in the environment, whether they're logged in, whether they're not, you can see that by the green or gray. There's different color indicators for the different styles, and to get this information in a natural sense, like if you were to go into the environment, you're logging into brokers, you don't know which broker they're using, you don't know what, like, there's a lot of involvement that happens here. And then when we start talking about applications and assignments, now you're talking about going into Active Directory, right? So all you're doing here is changing the page you're on to get this information and be able to do a lot of quick functions here, right? You can see right here, we're inside the user, we're doing password resets, we can log off, we can enable, disable the user, we can kill the user off by removing it. There's all these things. To do this with the native solution, you would have to be logging into easily 3 to 4 different systems, just because of the nature of how it all works, and that's all done for you right here. Now, I can imagine that most of us that run IT shops or are managing IT teams at organizations, we're not giving help desk people this level of access to be able to do a lot of this function by logging into Active Directory or whatever. You're probably using some other third-party tool to achieve that, which is built right here. And that's actually one of the things that we found is a lot of our stack was able to be reduced significantly in these style deployments because we're able to do these functions here. And now I don't have to be giving native access to users inside of client environments to this degree. It's all done right from one place, audited and everything else, which is also a bonus because if you were going to try to enable auditing, that's another product you have to worry about. So just awesome things like that.
So specifically, Frank, that would mean that your admins don't need direct access to Active Directory or GCP. So not only are there not additional consoles they have to manage it from, but then from a security standpoint or human error scenario, there's less likely to have those issues because they're not seeing those full consoles.
Correct. So let's not kid ourselves. This is an extremely powerful solution, but you're not going to be able to do everything under the sun. That's actually on purpose, right? Because it's designed to be for those use cases to be able to push tasks down that, from a risk perspective, usually makes its way up to higher level resources. But yes.
All right. Yeah, no, thank you for interjecting that. That's really helpful. So, just diving back into the few features though, very similarly, you can manage your applications. You can see, Chrome VS Code, 2 of the applications that I was given access to would reside right here. And then jumping down real quick is this Cloud Managers tab. Now, different from some of our competitors is we give you 100% access to the infrastructure that you spin up, right? We want you to make it's yours. It lives on your GCP project. We want you to have access to and the ability to constantly optimize it. So you can drill down to individual virtual machines. This is where you can start playing with that server uptime feature. But really how we do everything here at itopia is through images and collection pools. Now, I'll start with the images tab is, I don't, why we call it images, I think we should just call it what everybody's familiar with, golden image, right? This is where you're ultimately going to create that image of the baseline of applications, different tools that your workers need. So you can create a different image depending on, the type of employee you're ultimately going to be, pushing this out to. So, right. So accounting might have QuickBooks and calculator and all kinds of things. The marketing team might have some different software, but essentially you can create all these images here. And then what you'll do is you'll create a collection pool for each department, call it, right? So you can see going back to this demo collection that I'm a part of, everybody in this collection pool has the exact same access, the exact same applications, and it's a way to ensure that everybody is most up to date with, what they need. So you'll have a collection pool for accounting, marketing, sales. Everybody can have a different image. Now, when you actually drill down into these collection pools, you can see a few things. One is this is where you're going to enable this auto scaling. I always promise I'm not going to get too in the weeds to this. I'm not an engineer, partner sales guy. So, but very quickly you can see that, for any number of users per server, you'll spin up a different type of machine. So basically for the first 25 users, you're going to do another E2-4. Next 25 users, you're going to do E2-4. And that's great because you're going to make sure that you have resources that can accommodate the number of people that you're putting into this environment. Now, going back to that runtime, how do you ensure that these machines aren't running as people aren't using them? And that's where you'll enable this dynamic uptime feature. See, they don't even give me access to do it because they know I'll mess it up. But this is essentially where you would create that, hey, if there's only 23 people on, we're going to have one machine. When that 24th person comes on, we're going to turn on that second machine to accommodate that 25th person. So it's a way to constantly optimize the environment and make sure that you're only paying for resources that are going used. A couple other things is this is where you can apply that image to the entire collection pool. Any machine type is available to you that lives on GCP. And then as you can see here, we actually integrate from other features like stack driver, monitoring agent, logging agent. And you can really lock down this environment to the point where other than someone taking their phone and taking a picture of the screen, they can't access any sort of copy paste features. They can't access printers. They can't get into the task manager. And you really, the abilities are really endless with how you can customize and lock down this environment. Frank, Steve, anything you want to jump into?
Yeah. So something for those that have used other technologies that leverage non-persistent type of solutions, I want to throw out that the way this technology works is that while you can make it be non-persistent, it is designed to be persistent naturally. And what's the benefit for us as IT people is that as many of you have probably experienced in the non-persistent world, certain applications are not exactly friendly to the non-persistent world. And then you're doing a ton of manipulation to get it to be that way. The nice thing here is that these systems are in fact persistent. Now, again, you can destroy them every night if you want to, but if you just manage it normally, you can have a persistent image for the length of time you want until you do another image push out. And actually, this is the preferred way that we do it at Forthright. And it gives you a lot of flexibility. It actually also lets you run simultaneous images as well, so that you have that kind of flexibility to stand up a secondary image and keep both in use at the same time without having to deal with identity issues and things like that. So from again, I go back to when we think about the savings for us from a cost perspective. You're not having the non-persistent concept isn't something that has to be taught or trained, or lots of experience has to be given to that. The way you think a machine works, like any other server desktop, is exactly how this works, and that's really helpful in terms of onboarding techs, facilitating your users' requests, because now when they ask for an application, they think just hit next, next, next. That's how simple it is when they installed it on their home computer, and now they're yelling at IT, telling them how long does it take you to hit next 5 times, right? So these are the kind of things that really boil down to how to manage an environment effectively.
Thank you, sir. Just getting into a few more features here is the server uptime. I know we mentioned before, but as you can see, this is really where you can quickly come in and, create the schedule for your environment, turn machines on and off at 7, turn them off at 7, and you can actually pick the individual machines that you want to, work on that schedule.
So another thing about this schedule that's important is that it's not just tied to your systems that are linked for your end user computing environment. If you happen to be leveraging other servers inside of GCP, you can also have uptime schedules assigned to all of them there without having to be in GCP, which I highly recommend.
100%. Yes. Yeah, it's a definitely more popular feature than you could imagine. Lastly, the snapshots, right? I always say that this is not any sort of replacement for disaster and backup recovery, but it's definitely something that's available. So you can take snapshots of certain instances every day, month, year. It's something that's available to you. And then something that, it's not every application is cloud ready. There's still going to be scenarios where you need access to things that are on premises. So we make it easy to access those things through VPNs right here in our system. Is something that the people at Forthright will be really great. Lastly, the Insights module. Again, this is where you can set up that GCP billing, create those customer reports, but you can also see user activity, file activity, application activity. Sorry about the dog. The thing about VDI is it gives you some tremendous insights into your organization, and you can see, where things are either overutilized, underutilized, over-optimized, under-optimized, and it gives you the ability to constantly make changes. So, That is my, my very high level overview. I don't know if there's anything, Steve or Frank, you wanted me to touch on top of these features that I typically go through. I'm happy to do so, but
Well, I will.
that's kind of usually where I end.
I'll make a comment from an operations standpoint and from a business standpoint is that one of the risks from a technology deployment standpoint is that there are some technologies and some tools out there to do this that are heavily that make your environment dependent on them. And so once you install that and you roll it out, if for some reason you don't like or want to continue leveraging those tools, you have to rebuild your environment from scratch. I will tell you that is one of the things that mattered a lot to us in our managed services practice as we were looking at different management tools. Ironically, we didn't like the stickiness because it wasn't in the best interest of our clients that we would manage their environment, and now all of a sudden they had no choice. They were stuck. What I really love about itopia is you'll never want to remove it, but you can. You can turn it off and you'll lose the automation and you'll lose all this great access, but your environment continues running. And so you maintain complete control. And I think, Alex, you kind of touched on that in the beginning, but I really wanted to highlight that point because I think every time as technologists, every time we try new technology, we have to understand the impact of not just the onboarding, but also the migration off it, because that's always a potential that happens in different environments, because it could be a compatibility issue, it could be a political issue, it could be a budget issue, whatever it might be. You need to understand what that outcome is. And what I love about this product and how you guys have designed it is that you don't have to make that compromise. It's just not a risk for you. And that was a big part that we really loved about this.
It also helps when something does go wrong, because it's technology, that's what happens. It's very easy to rule out itopia because it wasn't doing anything in the first place for the actual use of your environment, right? It helps from an administrative perspective, but your users' day-to-day interactions with the system, that is not, and that's one of the challenges that you run into is that a lot of these technologies that are out there, competing technologies, they're so involved in that all of a sudden now they're part of the equation. They've added a new variable, and in many cases they have multiple variables to consider.
The agent overhead.
Correct.
Right.
Agent overhead, issues with versioning of the agents. It's one of the reasons why I personally like the web version. Eliminate that completely. Things like that are just ways of how, from an administrative perspective, it's just a much better experience to deal with, right? And obviously, to kind of give you guys an idea of the number of systems and consoles that we're talking about right now from this one view here. So you have your cloud console in GCP, and in many cases, depending on where you're looking, that could actually be multiple areas within the cloud console of GCP. You have your remote access gateway, your remote desktop gateway. You have broker, you have Active Directory, file server, right? These are all systems that you would have to give people access to in order for them to properly manage this effectively, right? And then within those systems, that there's multiple applications within them that they'd also be using, right? Active Directory users' computers, and also oh my God, what's the other one? Group policy, right? Things like that. There's areas here where the basics of what you're trying to do, the real top level items, are all handled in this one place. And I think that's something that can't be understated. So, and then ultimately, when we talk about user experience, I think this is gonna be my last comment, and then we'll open up to questions. Is that what we have learned at Forthright over the last nearly 30 years, right, of interacting with people, is that there's some very key factors that trigger folks, right? Waiting is one of them, and one thing that is so important to recognize here is that when there's something wrong, your ability to wait from a user's perspective, right, that threshold and how much time you're willing to wait is drastically reduced, right? And so you need to be able to resolve issues quickly. You need to be able to respond to a request quickly, and having to go through different tiers of people only actually light that fire of people being upset over waiting, because every time you do another transition, that's another handoff, another wait process that has to happen. And so anytime you're able to reduce the amount of time it takes to get to an activity, you're able to limit the number of people they have to interact with, they being the end user, the people that we're trying to service here, right? That wait time continues to shrink. And if you were to watch this, what Alex showed you earlier when he was inside the users, I kid you not, for you having to remote into solutions, Active Directory, even if you had it installed locally in your computer, you still have to launch that. That's one tool. You switch over to another tool to apply something else. You need access to give them access to shares or things like that, give them access to an application. Again, these are all multiple tools you're having to do, and the amount of time it would take to handle all that, you're talking 20, 30 minutes, and all you're doing is bouncing between consoles. That's not helping a user. Having it in one place really helps the user, and that can be really, really awesome for them and a user experience part. And then one thing, when Alex talked about any device, while mobiles aren't exactly the most friendly of devices for desktop technologies and whatnot, I did want to make sure that everyone knew that you can use this technology in mobile, even the web browser version stuff. I know myself, I've had to do that. I would not recommend that to users. That was really more of the IT team on the call today. Just know that those are some ways that I personally have to interact and jump on, and I find it to be very helpful versus trying to stand up some VPN and then connect to that and then use another application. No, that's silly. So those are all the things.
I want to piggyback on that, Frank. And by the way, if there are any questions for any of our guests, please go ahead and send them in the chat, and we'll read them off and we'll try to answer them. But I think the other issue that definitely impacts the experience of the end user is inconsistency. And I think that we see a lot of our clients that leverage various tools, or they're just leveraging the cloud and they're doing it manually. So they're not managing a catalog, they're not managing golden images. And what happens is day one that you deploy it, everything's logged, they're not managing golden image. The hour that system is running, things become more and more different from VM to VM. And depending on what your experience is every single day as you log in, these images are changing. And even if your applications are not changing, Windows itself is changing. And having a tool that allows you to manage those images and truly manage a golden image the right way, so you can, in fact, roll back, roll forward, and audit basically changes, is a big success factor and a big impact on end user experience. The clients that I see that kind of just use the native cloud tools, I mean, you can do it, but it's really painful. I mean, talking about doing things the hard way, I think that's something also that you benefit from this tool around the cloud management, the catalog management, is I think light years ahead of just using native cloud tools. So Alex, maybe because we have a few minutes, I'll just try to ask a question for the audience. Is there if you had to define your target environment or target client for this? I mean, obviously you're trying to roll out VDI. How would you articulate that? Where is this your product kind of targeted for?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think first and foremost, anybody who is a current GCP customer, it's a great workload for GCP. It's a great first workload for GCP. So, anybody who's looking to move to the cloud and modernize, and they've already kind of committed to GCP, that's definitely a good customer for us. Sorry about that. Definitely anybody who's sort of at the end of any kind of hardware life cycle, people who might be, at the end of a 3 or 5 year certificate of VMware, and they're asking themselves, do I really want to commit to another, 3 to 5 years of this, or am I looking to do something else? And then I think vertically specific, I know we've had a lot of success in education. Chromebooks are a great use case for us, but just because of obviously how they're designed, and they have no access to Windows applications. It's a great intermediary. So I would say that those are, three that come to mind as some of the top use cases for us. But like I mentioned, I mean, at the end of the day, people who are looking to access Windows applications remotely are always going to be, first and foremost, our best customers.
How about from a scalability standpoint, from a size of an organization or their deployment size?
Yeah, we align very closely with how Google kind of delineates their customer size. So that corporate to enterprise, anywhere between that, I think they do somewhere between, they do it revenue based, but I would say anywhere like 100 users and up, the scalability is going to make sense from an economic standpoint, that we can really drive that per user per month cost down. Obviously we have some environments up and running that are 10 people, but really our focus is at 100 users and up.
Okay, excellent. Now I know, I think Kristen, you're going to talk a little bit about the $500 credit for Google that's available, which is that's an interesting tool to set something like this up and try a pilot. Which, if you guys are interested, we would definitely love to reach out and work with you on setting that up and helping you get it going, so you can really get a feel for how this works. Kristen, did you want to talk about that a bit?
I was going to email everyone afterwards to give them the information on it.
Okay, so they just follow a link.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. So I would strongly suggest that our attendees go ahead and do that. It's kind of a zero risk and great thing to try out. And if you'd like some guidance on how to set that up, definitely feel free to reach out. Alex, any before we, I guess, close out, is there any tip of the day or key thing that takeaway that you think is important for our audience?
I think you just touched on it, Steve. I mean, I think if you're curious or you think it could be a solution that makes sense for you, reach out. We can do POCs or testing very quickly, and kind of give you an idea of not only what this would look like in terms of management, but also what it would cost. So, looking forward to working with anybody who's interested, and that's all I got to say.
Great. Well, thank you, Alex. Thank you, Frank and Kristen. Definitely
Yes.
Reach out if anybody has questions.
Yeah, we'll be following up with everyone in the next few days. I'd like to say thank you to Alex from itopia and Frank and Steve from Forthright for sharing with us all this really great information. And thank everyone in attendance for your time today. Like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to email either marketing or success@forthright.com, but we'll be reaching out to you in the next few days so you can just respond to that email.
Have a great day,
Thank you.
everyone.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Bye.